memory of Frimat Bat Avraham, Yaakov ben Moshe, Sima Reza Bat Pinchas, Yehuda Aryeh Alter ben Moshe, and Naphtali ben Yaakov. Let all the neshamot have an aliyah with the zchut of the learning of the parents together with their sons. The topic is Asar B'Tevet, and at 6:25, Rabbi Ifro will be saying the summary shiur of the Mamar Komis you're preparing. Fruitful learning.
I'm waiting to get one of these sheets. Can I take a picture? Oh, here, we have it. A service potatoes. We are learning about service potatoes. Service potatoes. And, how is it? Oh, I can't wait to see the whole thing. A comp set. Oh, that's all.
Okay, I think we're ready to start this year. Welcome. So first of all, I just wanted to thank the Freilich family for sponsoring this very beautiful initiative of parent-son monthly learning here in Torat Shraga. It's a very special thing to be a part of and a very special thing to see. It's a big schus for me to be able to give this year, this evening, this morning, wherever you happen to be in the world. So we all know that this Tuesday is Asar B'Teves, and this is the first chronological fast of the Arba Tainios that commemorate the Churban Beis HaMikdash. And if you look in source number 1 in the sheet, the Psukim in Sefer Malachim describe the tragedy of the Churban, and it begins, Vayhi b'shnat ha'tshiyis, in the 9th year Lamalcho of the reign of Hamelech Tzidkiyahu, B'chodesh Asiri, in the 10th month. This refers to the 10th month when we count from Nisan, which would bring us to Teves, where we find ourselves today. B'asur l'chodesh, on the 10th day of that month, Asar b'Teves, Ba Nebuchadnezzar melech Bavel, hu v'chol chelo al Yerushalayim. Nebuchadnezzar, the king of Bavel, and his army came to Yerushalayim, vayichan aleya, vayibnu aleya, dayek saviv. And they besieged the city of Yerushalayim. They built watchtowers around the city to enforce their siege. And then the Psukim go on to describe, we'll refer back to this in a bit, go on to describe the terrible Churban and plundering that occurred on Tisha B'Av. So if you look in source number 4, there is a very famous Abu Draham, striking of Draham, which paskins a halacha, which is very difficult to understand. Abu Draham describes in the first paragraph, Tzom ha'asiri z'asar b'teves, like we learned, Shebo samach Nebuchadnezzar melech Bavel yado al Yerushalayim, that the 10th of Teves is the time when Nebuchadnezzar, the king of Bavel, put his hand upon Yerushalayim, ve'eviam b'matzor u'v'matzok, and he placed a siege upon Yerushalayim. And skipping to the second paragraph, he says, Chiluk yesh beinayhem. There is a distinction to be made within the 4 Tainios that commemorate the Churban. That if one of these 4 fasts falls out on Shabbos, so generally the fast is pushed from Shabbos to the following day, to Sunday. Except for one, says Abu Draham. Chutz me'asar b'teves, except for Asar b'Teves, she'eno chal la'olam b'Shabbos, which happens to actually never fall out on Shabbos. Aval, however, hu chal lifamim b'yom shishi u'misanen bo bayom. It does sometimes fall out on Friday, one of the very rare occasions that we would fast on a Friday, Asar b'Teves. V'afilu haya chal b'Shabbos, and this is the striking statement of the Abu Draham, where he says that even if Asar b'Teves would fall out on Shabbos, lo yuchol mitchoso le'yom acher, we would not be able to push off Asar b'Teves to a different day, because the pasuk in Yechezkel says in reference to Asar b'Teves, be'etzem hayo bazeh, that Asar b'Teves is on this very day, k'mo b'Yom Kippur, like we find on Yom Kippur, and other fasts, none of the other fasts ever fall out on Friday. Asar b'Teves, the only fast will fast on a Friday, and theoretically speaking, had Asar b'Teves fallen out on Shabbos, we would even fast on Shabbos Asar b'Teves. That is a statement of the Abu Draham. And that statement, when examined in light of the Gemara in Taanis and Daf Chav Tesam and Beis, becomes very, very difficult. The Gemara in Taanis says, in source number 5, Tanya, Tisha B'Av shechalios b'Shabbos, when Tisha B'Av comes out on Shabbos, v'chein Erev Tisha B'Av shechalios b'Shabbos, or when Erev Tisha B'Av comes out on Shabbos, Ochel v'shose kol tzorko. A person can eat and drink as much as they want. Umale al shulchano afilu kesudas shlomo b'shaito. And you can put a feast on your table, even one similar to that of Shlomo HaMelech in the climax of his glory, in the climax of his reign. You could have a massive suda, a massive feast on Tisha B'Av shechalios b'Shabbos, because on Tisha B'Av we push off the fast until Sunday. So how could it be that on Tisha B'Av, which is the day that commemorates the actual Churban Beis HaMikdash, both the Bayis Rishon and the Bayis Sheni, so we say that Tisha B'Av on Shabbos, that's no good. We have to push it off to Sunday. But the Abu Draham tells us that if Asar b'Teves were to fall out on Shabbos, then we would fast. What makes Asar b'Teves so unique to warrant a fast on Shabbos? So we'll examine here a few answers to that question. The first answer is in a Sefer Dvar Sinai from my Rebbe Rav Sinai Adler Zatzal, who always felt that Asar B'Teves was a very special day because in many circles that's also the day of Yom HaShoah. He was a Holocaust survivor, and that's the day of commemorating the Holocaust. And he writes in the Sefer that in order to properly understand how Asar B'Teves could trump Tisha B'Av when it comes to Shabbos, we have to first look in the Gemara in Tainis, an Amud earlier in Daf Chav Tes Amud Aleph. The Gemara says, Charav Abayis Barishona, the first Beis HaMikdash was destroyed. Tichsiv v'chodesh hachamishi b'shiva l'chodesh yishnas 19 shana l'melech Nebuchadnezzar melech Bavel. On the 5th month, on the 7th of the month, the 5th month being Av, the 5th month from Nisan, the melech Bavel, the king Nebuchadnezzar of Bavel, came and bad Nebuzaradan, Rav Tabachim, Eved melech Bavel Yerushalayim, Nebuzaradan, his chief slayer, the way the Mitzudos explains Rav Tabachim. He was a murderer. They came to Yerushalayim by Yisrof es Beis Hashem, and they burned down the Beis HaMikdash. And then the pasuk says, "Usiv uvechodesh hachamishi ba'asor lachodesh hishnas 19 shana l'melech Nebuchadnezzar melech Bavel ba'am nizaradan Rav Tabachim amad lifnei melech Bavel Yerushalayim v'chulei." So we have here two different dates for the Churban Beis HaMikdash. The psukim in Melachim describe the Beis HaMikdash. The Churban is taking place on the 7th of Av, while the pasuk in Yirmiyahu describes the Churban Beis HaMikdash as what we know as taking place on the 9th of Av. So how are these two things reconciled? On the 10th of Av, I'm sorry. So how are these two reconciled? So the Gemara says, V'tanya, we learn in a Brisa, Ef Shalomar B'Shiva, Shrak Varnemar B'Asur. It can't be that it took place on the 7th when the pasuk says it took place on the 10th. V'Ef Shalomar B'Asur, Shrak Varnemar B'Shiva. And it can't be that it took place on the 10th when the pasuk said it took place on the 7th. HaKetzad. How can these two things coexist? So the Gemara explains, B'Shiva nichnasu nachrim laheichal. On the 7th of Av, the Goyim came into the Heichal of the Beis HaMikdash, v'achlu v'kilkulu bo shvi v'shmini. And they ate there, and they behaved in a depraved manner on the 7th and 8th of Av. Uchi samach l'chashecha hitzisu bo es ha'or. And then, on the 9th of Av, right before sunset, they lit the fire that would ultimately consume the Beis HaMikdash. V'yadolek v'holech chol hayom kulo. And that fire continued to burn the duration of the entire day through the 10th. Shenemar oilanu kipana yom ki natu tzilei arif. V'hainu dami Rabbi Yochanan. That's what Rabbi Yochanan used to say. Ilmale ha'isi b'oso ador. If I would have been alive in that generation that was determining which day should be set to commemorate the Churban HaBayis, lo kivativ el ba'asiri. I would have only set the 10th of Av as the day to commemorate the Churban. Because the majority of the Beis HaMikdash was actually burned not on the 9th of Av, but on the 10th. V'Rabbanan, what about the Rabbanan who established the practice that we know today, that we commemorate Tisha B'Av on the 9th of Av? Rabbanan atchalta de puranusa adifa. The beginning of the tragedy, that is the most appropriate time to commemorate the Churban Beis HaMikdash. So Rav Sinai, over here in source number 7, we don't have to read the whole thing inside right now, but in source number 7, Rav Sinai says, if the 9th of Av, which was the beginning of the actual destruction of the physical structure of the Beis HaMikdash, is the most important time, most appropriate time to commemorate the Churban, so then it could follow that the most chashuv day, the most important day in terms of the process of Churban that ultimately led to that terrible day of Tisha B'Av, the first day in that process was Asar B'Teves. And since that was the first day of the process, that was the real atchalta de puranusa, that was the real beginning of the tragedy. That's why it's so important that it would even trump Shabbos and we would fast on Shabbos. There is a famous Nimukei Yosef that the Mefarshim I'll quote over here in Bava Kama. The Gemara has a machlokes in Bava Kama between Rabbi Yochanan and Rish Lakish. If a person damages by way of fire, so do we say Eisho Mishum Chitzav or Eisho Mishum Mamono? Do we say that a person lights a fire, do we view the fire as if it's an extension of himself? The fire is like his arrows that go out and damage, as if the person himself directly damaged? Do we say that no, Eisho Mishum Mamono, that a person setting a fire, lighting a fire, and the fire damaging is more comparable to a person's property, like his ox, going ahead and damaging somebody else? So the Mugi Yosef there asks a very famous kasha. If you say Eshu Mishum Chitzav, like Rabbi Yochanan, if you'd say that a person setting a fire, it's like your arrows, it's like you're doing a continuing act of damage. So how could it be that we could ever light Shabbos candles? How can you light Shabbos candles? You light candles on Erev Shabbos, the candles continue to burn even after Shabbos has begun. And if we view the lighting of the fire and the burning of the fire as a continuous act on the part of the lighter, so that should be an act of Chilul Shabbos, because the candles are burning as a result of the fact that I lit them. So the Mukhi's answer is a very famous teretz. He says that, no. What the Gemara means when it says Eshu Mishum Chitzav, that a person is responsible for the entire damage caused by the fire that he lit, what that means is that we view all the damage that the fire will affect as having taken place at the moment where the fire was lit. It's like everything was condensed into that 1 second that it took you to light the fire. It's not that there's an ongoing act of damage that you're continuously burning down your friend's field. The whole field was considered to be burned at the moment of the lighting. So too over here, when it comes to Hadlakas Erev Shabbos, when a person lights candles in Erev Shabbos, it's not that there's a continuing act of burning, of lighting fire that the person is considered to being done. No, the person lights the candles in Erev Shabbos. If Chas v'Shalom, the candles are damaged, all the damage will be viewed as having taken place on Erev Shabbos. So too over here, the Mefarshim say, I think I saw this in the Sefer Maori Yisrael the first time, Rav Ovadia Yosef has a Sefer Maseches Tainus, where he says that's exactly what's going on over here, that the Churban Beis HaMikdash, the Atchalta, the Puranusa Adifa, we commemorate the Churban HaBayis on the 9th of Av, because that's when the fire was lit. It's as if the entire destruction of the Churban took place at that moment when the fire was lit on the 9th. So perhaps that's one answer, and we're going to, I think, Amir Tzashem, we'll have time to flesh that out a little bit more in a moment. There are a few other answers that I wanted to just mention over here, some very fascinating Marmakomos. There is a parak in Tehillim, which begins in source number 8, Mizmor LaAsaf, a song of Asaf, a song. And the Tehillim says, Elokim, Ba'u goyim b'nachlasecha, Timu asecho kodshecha, Samu Yisrashayim liyim. The goyim came into your inheritance, into your Beis HaMikdash. They defiled it, impurified it. They destroyed Yerushalayim. Nasnu es nivlas avadecha ma'achala ufa shamayim. They placed the dead bodies of your servants, Hashem, as food for the birds of the sky. B'sar chasidecha l'chaiso aretz. The flesh of your pious ones was put out as food for the animals of the earth. Shafchu damam kamayim sfilus Yerushalayim ben kover. Their blood was spilled all around Yerushalayim with nobody there to bury the people. Rashi quotes a medrash, Rashi in Kiddushin, Tosfos in Kiddushin says the same. Quote a medrash, what kind of song is this? Mizmor la'asaf, kina la'asaf mi ba'ilai. How could this be referred to as a mizmor? This is a song, this very graphic description of what took place at the Churban Beis HaMikdash, that's a song? That's not a song, that's a kina, that's a lamentation. Mizmor is not the appropriate word. So if you look over here in Rashi says, kina la'asaf mi ba'ilai. It should have said Kina la'asaf, lamentation, v'darash kach. This is the drasha. Sha'amar Asaf Shira. Asaf actually said a Shira over the Churban. Al shekila hakadosh baruch hu chamaso be'etzim va'avanim shebeveso u'mitoch kach hotir pleita b'Yisrael. Hashem took out His wrath, so to speak, as it were, upon the sticks and stones of the Beis HaMikdash, and by taking out His anger on the physical structure of the Beis HaMikdash, so the Jewish people were spared that wrath. Shel malekach, had that not been the case, lo nishtar bisuneim shel Yisrael sarid. There would be no survivors, chas v'shalom, of the Jewish people. So, a second answer as to what the severity of Asar B'Teves is over Tisha B'Av is that Tisha B'Av, although it was a terrible, terrible day, and we view it as perhaps the most terrible day on the calendar, there is a measure of rachamim that is built into the day of Tisha B'Av, that because Hashem destroyed the Beis HaMikdash, B'nai Yisrael were spared. As opposed to Asar B'Teves, there is no measure of rachamim. Asar B'Teves is the day where Hashem decided this is the process of Churban is now going to be set in place, and it's Kulodin. And because it's Kulodin, there's a certain severity that exists on Asar B'Teves that doesn't exist even on Tisha B'Av, and therefore it can perhaps trump even Shabbos. If you look here in the Rambam in source number 10, which we're not going to read inside just for the sake of time, the Rambam points out, maybe just halacha aleph we'll read, In Halacha Aleph, in Hilchos Tainios, Perek Hey Halacha Aleph, the Rambam says, there are days in which all of the Jewish people fast as a result of the tragedies that occurred on those days. And we fast on these days in order to awaken our hearts and to open up ways of tshuva. We should realize that this is a remembrance of our bad deeds which caused us to be in the terrible position that we're in Galus, and the misdeeds of our forefathers as well. And so these days are days of tshuva. Now that's true on 3 out of the 4 fast days. They are entirely 100% days of tshuva. Tisha B'Av, although it certainly is a day of tshuva, has another element to it which does not exist on the other fast days, which is that Tisha B'Av has an element of Avelus. And we're familiar with all the Dinei Avelus that we have on Tisha B'Av. Besides the fasting is not a din of Avelus, but we sit on the floor, and we don't wear tefillin in the regular way that we wear tefillin, and we don't learn Torah, and we don't have She'elas Shalom, we don't greet people on Tisha B'Av. All these nihugim are nihugei Avelus. And there's no Avelus on Shabbos, and therefore Tisha B'Av cannot fall out on Shabbos. We cannot observe Tisha B'Av on Shabbos, as opposed to Asar B'Teves, which perhaps we can. Fine. I want to finish off in Ritz Hashem, and maybe we'll connect it back with a statement of Chassam Sofer, which is a very famous Chassam Sofer, and a very, very powerful thing. It's in the Siddur Chassam Sofer. I finally looked it up inside for the first time just this past Friday. Chassam Sofer says, and Reb Chaim says this also, part of it, and it's brought down in many Sfarim, that there is one fast that we do fast on Shabbos. There is one fast that it's permitted to fast on Shabbos, and that's a Tainis Chalom. If a person has a bad dream, and you're scared that the bad dream is foreshadowing to some type of tragedy that may take place in the future, so a person is allowed to fast on Shabbos in order to be mevatel, to nullify any type of negative effects that dream may foretell. That's the only case that we'll fast on Shabbos, except for when Yom Kippur falls out on Shabbos also. So says the Chassam Sofer, why is it that we can fast for a bad dream, to be mevatel what's going to happen later? We're worried that the dream is foretelling something, but we can't fast because of tshuva for something that we did in the past. We can't fast to commemorate our averas and to return to Hashem. That we can't do on Shabbos. So the Chassam Sofer explains that on Shabbos you can fast for the future, and Reb Chaim says this as well. You can fast for the future, but we don't fast for the past. That's the only time. And why is it that we fast in the future? The Mefarshim say, why is it that we fast for a Tainis Chalom on Shabbos? Because on Shabbos you have to have oneg, you have to be happy, you have to rejoice. And over here, your rejoicing is the fast. Because by fasting, in order to cancel out any bad effects of the dream, that is more joyous to you than sitting down and eating a lavish meal. So Shabbos is permitted, as we see from Tainis Chalom, it's permitted to fast to cancel out something negative that may happen in the future. It's not permitted to fast to commemorate something that happened in the past. Says the Chassam Sofer, and this is the kicker, an unbelievable thing. Says the Chassam Sofer, Asar B'Teves is the Rosh Hashanah for the Beis HaMikdash. Every year on Asar B'Teves is a Yom Hadin, it's a day of judgment, where Hashem decides if there's going to be a rebuilding of the Beis HaMikdash this year, or the Beis HaMikdash this year will remain in its state of destruction, in a state of Chorban. And therefore, says Chassam Sofer, a person is fasting on Shabbos on Asar B'Teves in order to nullify a bad decree going into the future. Which is a very powerful thing. It really lends a lot of weight, besides the tshuva that we have to do, but we should realize the severity, realize the seriousness of what's happening this coming Tuesday. There is a statement by the Beis Yishai, Drashos Beis Yishai, where Shlomo Fisher, Zichrono Livracha, was a gadol here. He lived in Har Nof, here in Eretz Yisrael. I was able to hear him a number of times in Mevaseret. And he writes in that sefer, Beis Yishai, the following striking comment. He says, Libi Omerli, my heart tells me, and you have to be an Adam Gadol to make a statement like this, Libi Omerli, that the chait of Mechiras Yosef took place on Asar B'Teves. The sin of Yosef's brothers selling him down to Mitzrayim took place on Asar B'Teves. Wow. Why did his heart tell him that? What about the chait of Mechiras Yosef is connected to Asar B'Teves? And as we know, a very famous Gemara in Yuma Daf Tas, the Churban Bayis Rishon was a result of the Gimel Averos Chamuros, Avodah Zarah, Shvichus Damim, and Gilui Arayos, the Avera for which the second Beis HaMikdash was destroyed was Sinas Chinam. And the Gemara says this is L'lamed Sheshkulim Heim. This teaches us that these things are equal, that Sinas Chinam is just as bad as the big three Averas Chamuros. So Rav Fisher is telling us over here, Libi Omerli, my heart tells me that the Chet of Mechiras Yosef, which was the seeds planted of Sinas as a result of Sinas Chinam, these were the seeds, the Sinas Chinam of that act that planted the future Churban, as we suffer from today, Sinas Chinam, that we're for some reason not able to get along with each other. So Mirz Hashem, we should all reflect over the next couple of days and through Asar B'Teves on how we can be misaking, we can fix this problem of Sinas Chinam, and we should be Zocher Mirz Hashem to a binyan Beis HaMikdash b'mheira v'yameinu. Amen.